Let's come to the issues, the principles that in a sense underlie what I call the Taslima Nasreen story. To begin with, do you view freedom of speech as an absolute freedom without any limitations, or would you accept that there are certain specific constraints that we all have to accept?
Look, it's a complicated question and has been debated often. I personally do view it as something that should have no caveats, because for the simple reason that in a place where there are so many contending beliefs, so many conflicting things, only the powerful will then decide what those caveats should be are. And it'll always, the caveats will always be used by the powerful.
So you're saying that in fact, given the fact that many people in India are vulnerable, freedom of speech for them should have no caveats, it should be absolute, that's their only protection.
I think so. Because if you look at it, look at the fact that you have outfits like the VHP or the Bajrang Dal or that CD that the BJP produced in the UP elections. They do what they want to do. The powerful always do what they want to do. It is the powerless and the vulnerable that need free speech.
Let's explore the position that you're taking, that freedom of speech is an absolute freedom, there should be no limitations on it. What about the view that by criticizing Islam, Taslima has offended beliefs which for tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of Indians are sacred? These are beliefs that underlie their dignity, their sense of identity. Should freedom of speech extend that far as to threaten people's sense of themselves?
Look, I don't believe that a writer like Taslima Nasreen can undermine the dignity of 10 million people. You know, who is she? She's not a scholar of Islam. She doesn't even claim that Islam is her subject. She might have said extremely stupid things about Islam. I have no problem. I mean, the quotations I've heard, the Kondito has not been translated in English. But let's assume that what she said was stupid and insulting to Islam. But, you know, you have to be prepared to be insulted by something that insignificant.
Well, let me quote to you some of the things that she said, not from the Quindito, but from an interview she gave to Anthony McIntyre in The Blanket in 2006. She says, "It's not true that Islam is good for humanity. It's not at all good. Islam completely denies human rights." Elsewhere she talks about what she calls the venomous snake of Islam. To me, that sounds as if it goes perhaps beyond simple critique into deliberate provocation.
It sounds like Donald Rumsfeld or, you know, some Christian fundamentalist saying stuff about Islam.
And you would rile at Donald Rumsfeld, so why shouldn't others rile at her?
Yeah, but I wouldn't say ban him or kill him, you know. I would say, what a ridiculous person, you know. What a ridiculous thing. How can you start reacting to every... You know, we have an infinite number of stupidities in the world. How can you start having your foundations rocked by every half-wit?
Let me put it like this. Does freedom of speech necessarily include the right to offend?
Obviously, it includes the right to offend, otherwise it wouldn't be the freedom of speech.
But is that an acceptable right in India?
One person's offense is another person's freedom, you know.
That may be so in England, it may be so in America, where Western levels of education have allowed people to hear something offensive without reacting violently. But in India, where the education levels are so disparate, where religion is so emotional and so passionately held, then if you have freedom of speech verging into the right to offend, you end up provoking people often to violence, sometimes to death.
Look, first of all, I think we have to understand that education is a very loaded term, you know, because modernity is what is creating some of this kind of radical fundamentalism, you know, and it's not like traditional India. In fact, if you look at any studies that have been done, actually communal riots have increased.
Aren't you evading my point? You're questioning what is meant by modernity, what is meant by education, but you know and I know that the levels of sophistication in terms of being able to handle offense to your religion or criticism of your God vary hugely in India.
No, but what I'm saying is the level of sophistication is far better in rural areas than, let's say, in urban areas.
You mean rural Indians are better able to take a criticism of Ram or Allah?
If you look at the kinds of riots in urban and rural areas, you'll see that, you know, historically.
Let me give you a specific example and then answer that.
Okay.
If criticism of Islam by Taslima Nasreen leads to a situation where people come out and riot on the streets, and there's a real genuine threat that innocent people could end up killed. What in that circumstance should be the government's priority? To defend freedom of speech or to take steps to prevent the loss of human life?
Well, I don't think that's a choice. I think they have to defend freedom of speech and do everything that they can to prevent the loss of human life. Because here, what is happening is that this kind of right to offend or my sentiments have been hurt has become a business in democratic politics. So it's that the governments, let's say the political parties, are engineering these situations and creating situations in which lead to a loss of life. Otherwise, why should it be that Dwikondito has been on the bestseller list for 4 years in West Bengal and nothing has happened? And suddenly when there's a march, a massive march and a massive mobilization against the CPM, it suddenly reappears as insulting people's sentiments.